Hello. In this video, we are going to learn how to use the quadratic formula. So first, what is the quadratic formula and why is it useful? The best thing about the quadratic formula is that it can be used to solve any quadratic formula. So we've looked at factoring and we've looked at completing the square. Well, factoring can only be used sometimes, and completing the square may not always be the best thing to use. I mean, we can use it almost any time, but quadratic formula is simple, straightforward, and will work every single time without a doubt. So to use quadratic formula, our quadratic function must be in standard form, meaning that it must equal 0. So let me teach you a song. The song goes, negative b, plus or minus square root, b squared minus 4ac, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, all over 2a. I'm going to sing it again. Negative b, plus or minus square root, b squared minus 4ac, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, all over 2a. So that's our quadratic formula. Learn the song, know the song, love the song, embrace the song. And anytime you see a quadratic function on the ACT, you will know how to solve it without doubt. So let's apply the quadratic formula. Let's solve the function 4x squared minus 6x plus 3 equals 0. You see the quadratic formula at the top. Negative b, plus or minus square root, b squared minus 4ac, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, all over 2a. Okay, so the first thing, to be able to even use the formula, we need to know what a, b, and c are. A is always with x squared, so a is 4. B is always with x, so it's negative 6. And c is always by itself, so c is 3. A is not 4x squared. A is the coefficient of x squared. B is not negative 6x. B is only the coefficient of x, which in this case is negative 6. And c is the constant, the one number that does not have a variable. So let's plug it in. Negative b, plus or minus square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, all over 2a. So there we plugged everything in. Okay, so now using your calculator, you are going to simplify the numbers that are underneath the square root. Plugging in negative 6 squared minus 4 times 3 using parentheses as you've seen them on your screen, because if you do not put parentheses around negative 6, you will get the incorrect answer. You will get negative 12. Breaking down negative 12. Negative 12 is 3 times 4, right? Okay, so negative 1 times 12. So that's 3 times 4. The square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of negative 1 is I. Oh, I skipped that. I forgot I put that there. So we can separate negative 1 times the square root of 12. And so we get I times 2 square root of 3. Okay, once again, the 2 came from, because I know that 12 is 4 times 3, and the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 3 is an irrational number. So I know it's 2 square root of 3. Now I'm going to write that as 2i square root of 3. I'm going to plug that into my function. And what I notice here is that I have 6, 2, and 8. All three of these are even numbers. Even if 3 was an even number, because it's the inside of the square root, I cannot touch it. But 6, 2, and 8 are all outside the square root. They are all even. It is time to simplify them. Since they're even, we can simplify by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we get x equals 3 plus or minus I square root of 3 over 4. What this means is that x is 3 plus I square root of 3 over 4. And x is 3 minus I square root of 3 over 4. So those are our two answers to our quadratic function. Let's do another one. This function is 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. And we see our equation, our formula, yay. Okay, A is the coefficient of x squared. In this case, that is 2. B is the coefficient of x. In this scenario, that's -5. And C is the constant, which is 3. It just so happens that C was 3 last time as well. That was just a coincidence. So here we have our function. -b, -b. See how I have both negative signs because the formula was negative and the b from the function was negative? Plus or minus square root, b squared. Okay, b squared is once again in parentheses. It's always in parentheses. Minus 4ac, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, all over 2a. So now we need to simplify. We know a negative -5 is the same thing as +5. And looking underneath the radical, we know that -5 squared is going to be 25. Minus 4 times 2 times 3. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. So 25 minus 24 is 1. You could also put that in your calculator all at one time. And the square root of 1 is 1. Therefore, we need to split this into two scenarios. X plus 1 over 4 and x. X is 5 plus 1 over 4 and 5 minus 1 over 4. So 5 plus 1 over 4, that's 6 over 4, which reduces to 3 over 2. And 5 minus 1 over 4 is 4 over 4, which reduces to 1. So our two answers are 3/2, 1. When you're completing your assignment, if you want to have a better chance of it showing up green once you submit it, you're going to type in the answers from least to greatest, which is not what I did. Oops. But in the formula, in the form, as answer choices, I type them from least to greatest. X equals 3/2, space 1, or something like that. So you may not be able to get the spaces exactly correct, but at least you could get the order to match, so maybe you have a better chance of getting the spaces to match. Anyway, you all know that I go through and look at the forms and mark your answers correct if you typed in the right thing, even if your spaces were not correct or your formatting was not the same as mine. So that concludes the quadratic formula. Next, we're going to learn how to graph quadratic functions, and it's going to be so much fun. See you then.